Because this is an illustration for my ebook this month, I'm going to recompose this particular image. It's going to be, I'll number it Chiffchaff 1, but it's actually off to the right hand side. It's really nicely composed as a photograph, but because it's an illustration, I'm just going to place it in the middle of the page. I'm not looking for complete accuracy. I'm looking for it to look like a painting. I want my paintings to look like paintings, and I want the sort of the personality to emerge as I go along as well. And I find that they kind of take on their own little personalities. So I'm just starting by marking out the branch, and then I'm going to roughly decide where. Again, it's not going to be, accuracy is not really important at this point, so I want to make sure that it looks like a chiffchaff, but chiffchaffs, like humans, are all individuals, so it being a completely accurate representation of this photograph is not important to me. So this is just a really rough sketch, just getting in the positions of things. And if drawing isn't your strong point, to be quite honest, I would just print the picture off and trace it, because it's all about learning. It's about learning to draw something that you're happy with. If accuracy is something that you really want to go for, then it will help you to start by tracing. Practice is the thing that will help you most, though. Just doing it on a regular basis. To be quite honest, I haven't drawn birds for quite a while, so I'm a little bit rusty. But that's okay. I used to draw birds every day. I used to challenge myself to do like 90 birds in a month, so I was drawing 3 birds a day, and I found that I got into a way of doing it because I didn't have very much time. So I found that I really got into a way of drawing that was quick and accurate, and that I could just rely on. Over that month period, it was a really good thing for me to do in terms of my drawing practice. And the drawings at the end of it were much stronger than the drawings at the beginning of it. Just need to concentrate on this bit. The stripe actually, the stripe doesn't go through the eye, it goes over the eye. So those sorts of things I think are quite important, because that's what makes this, where the stripe is over the eye, does make a difference in identifying birds. So things like that are quite important. Little feet, little claws that come over the top here. It's our natural instinct to straighten things up, and its little beak here actually points up quite a lot more than that. So I am going to alter that using my rubber. Most of the time I try to avoid using a rubber. I'd rather just go over the mistakes, because I think it adds to the character of the drawing. But on this occasion, because that area will just be white, I have actually rubbed it out. I could draw and draw and draw this, and I'm not going to improve it, I don't think. I just want to make a little adjustment there, because it's quite fluffed out at that side. And just put a couple of little marks there, just to suggest feathers. The description of this bird from Uplash, I think this one was on, which is, they're free to use. I choose free to use images so that I can share them with people and so that other people can draw them, and I don't run into any copyright issues. And it was described as a Chiffchaff, but Chiffchaff warblers they're all quite similar to each other, and because this one is shaded, and it might be another sort of warbler, so I wouldn't take it as 100% certain that this is definitely a Chiffchaff. I think it's a Chiffchaff because it's got dark legs, and other warblers tend to have lighter legs. I'm just rubbing out the bird from the branch so the branch is nice and clean. Missing a toe, I don't know where it is. It's not in the photograph, so I'm just going to have to leave it out. There is also another little branch that comes across here, but I don't think it's necessary to put that in. I might actually miss this bit off as well when I come to paint it, because as I say, it's an illustration. It's not quite in the middle, but it's going to be an illustration for my ebook, so it's not necessarily a finished painting, so I'm not too concerned about its positioning. I'll now start to paint it. So using watercolours, I also have a little sheet of paper that I can just test my colours on. And I build up from the light to the dark, leaving white paper wherever possible. Sometimes I do draw in the sometimes I do draw in the light in their eye or something with a little Posca pen or something like that. But I tend to try to leave the white paper wherever possible. So starting with plenty of water, and it's got a nice little lemony yellow tint to it. This is actually, it's some sort of ink that I've left that I left to dry, and it won't come out actually, so it's not dirty, the palette is clean. I'm just going to start with that quite bright yellow. But I try to work with the colours quite intuitively, so I probably won't be able to tell you exactly what colours I'm using. But that's what will make, what I don't want to happen is for people to make a completely accurate representation of what I've painted. I want them to make their own painting and something that reflects their own choices. So you might see this, I can't tell how you're going to see this picture that we're painting from. You might see it completely differently. And I'm just looking at where that yellow is and just blobbing it in, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow ochre into that. And again, just going over the top, allowing it to mix as I go. Just leaving the white areas, but even there's little bits of yellow in it. You might hear some noises from my household while I'm painting. People on the phone and things like that. Unavoidable tractors outside as well. And the light's not being particularly helpful. It keeps tracking across my painting as I'm doing it, so it's not being particularly helpful. Just using a little bit of, I think this is burnt umber, just to start to build up that texture now. Again, allowing those colours to flood into each other, so there might remain some completely pure yellow ochre, but mostly the colours will start to blend. The light is coming from this side, so I don't want to have too much, so I'm just going to remove a little bit of that actually. It was a little bit too dark. So I was just removing it, just drying my brush off and then removing it with the dry brush. A little line that comes across here. I might actually draw that back in again with the pencil later because I want it to be quite specific. Around its eye, underneath its eye is quite dark. I've got quite a lot of shadow under here as well, so I can use darker tones. Is quite dark, so really carefully with a fairly dry brush just putting the beak in. It's got a light top to it. And my brush isn't, it's a bit worn, this brush, but I'm using that to my advantage because it means it's separated a little bit and I can just add a little bit of texture there which will blend into the wet paint. The last thing I want to do is to paint every feather, but I want to give the impression that there are feathers. And now I'm just adding a little bit of black into my brown. I tend not to use black very much as a pure colour. I tend to add it to other things. It just tends to be the criticism of using black is usually that it's very dead colour, and it can be, but I like to use it in addition to other colours. So this is just the shaded area here of the bird, and I'll blend some more colours into that. And it has a dark tail. At some point I will have to let this dry so that the colours don't completely blend together, but for the time being I'm happy for them to continue to blend. I'm just using a little bit of burnt sienna just to brighten it up a little bit, mixed with the burnt umber and a touch of black. This side, it's just quite, that beak's got a slight red tinge to it as well, I think. And then I want some more, it's a slightly greeny tinge. So I'm just mixing a little bit of green into the, I think that's cadmium yellow and the yellow ochre, just to give me a little bit more of a greeny tinge to that head. Just building up the layers. There's that thing about with watercolours not being able to use more than 3 layers before it gets muddy. I think if you're painting wet in wet, you can get away with keeping going a little bit longer, but it is always a problem that you might muddy the colours. A lot of it is knowing when to stop with watercolours, I think. Just going to pop in this branch now, which again it will bleed into the bird because it's all still wet, but I'm not too concerned about that. And for contrast, I'm going to go with a more red brown, so using a bit more burnt sienna. Not paying too much attention to any detail. I just want the structure of it really in my painting, and then adding some black and brown, black and burnt umber to the underside of it, just to give it that slightly three-dimensional feel to it. I've got that darker colour I'll add another layer of dark to the tail and wing. The eye is fairly black. I wouldn't paint this unless I don't want the eye colour to bleed into the rest of the head, so I'm being very careful not to touch the bits that are wet. Makes such a difference when you add the eye, I think. Because I've not painted birds for quite a while, I'm being a lot more careful, a lot more finicky than I would normally be. It's I feel like I've got less confidence than I would like to have, but that confidence is only gained with practice. Okay, I'm going to let it dry now for a little while, and then I'll come back to it and start adding a little bit more detail. I've given it a few minutes to dry, and actually there's a little bit more clarity in it now as well. I can see what's happening with the paint. I don't think it needs a great deal more. I need to darken the tail, a little bit more shadow under here, a little bit more shadow on the branch, darken the wing. Still using my larger brush, and I'm starting to use more black now because that tail is quite dark. Just mixing it with a bit of brown, but quite a lot of black in there now. Just got to remind myself that there is some lighter feathering in here as well. Got a slightly lighter stripe down that side as well. I don't think anybody's going to particularly scrutinise the accuracy of this to my painting, but I always think they will, so. I always believe there's somebody out there scrutinising everything I do, but that's just me being me. I'm really sure that they actually don't care. That's just a little bit of black actually there. And then I'm going to flood a little bit more black into this wet brown, so that just to give it a bit more depth and darkness, but not too, just flooding it into the wet paint like this, it'll give it a little bit of an unevenness, and it'll make it less dense and sort of dead. A little bit more shade around there, I think. More shade around the eye. A little bit more texture in here. bit of feather texture here and there, which I'm going to just lighten up again because it's a bit too dark. Just got to paint the feet in, which may bleed into the bark, but that's okay. I'll neaten them up. At the end with the pencil. I'm going to go for a little bit more black along this branch just to give it a little bit more of a three-dimensional effect. And a little bit more down here as well. Neatening those lines up. There's a little bit of feather texture where the leg goes into the body there. Okay, time to let it dry again. Oh, just notice there's a little line round its eye, so I'll just paint that in. It's definitely got a slightly grumpy personality, this bird. I'm going to leave it to dry again, then I'll go back in with the pencil. Okay, I've sat here for 20 minutes and watched the paint dry, and resorted to my hairdryer in the end, which I don't normally use because it tends to leave these little lines. The paint dries too quickly and it doesn't sort of absorb into the paper. Now I'm going to use this Pitt oil-based pencil. It's a extra soft one, and you need to keep it quite sharp in order to keep a nice line. I like these better than graphite because graphite tends to leave a sort of shininess. I'm just going to get rid of the marks that are left by the graphite, which with my sort of initial sketch marks. Obviously the paint needs to be completely dry in order to do this. I often fall foul of being too impatient and rub things and smudge them and make a mess. So now I'm just going to add a little bit more detail. Quite pivotal, I think, is the shape of the beak. I'm observing that it's got a deeper, the bottom of the beak is deeper than the top. It might just be the view of it. I am quite an avid bird watcher, but when it comes to species like willow warbler and that you tend not to get too close to them, it's more difficult to know whether it's just the angle or whether that is an actual feature of the bird. So I'm just defining the things that I feel make it this particular unique bird. And you get a really nice black from these Pitt oil-based pencils. It definitely does look a bit grumpy, this one. All the birds have a personality and it isn't given to them by me. they develop it as I'm painting. I'm not adding too much detail to the feet because it's not obvious in the photograph actually, so I'd just be making it up. So I'm going to just draw what I can see. And here is where I can really delineate that, or even though the colour, the tone isn't, like, it is quite a lot different actually in the photograph, but in my painting it's not that much different, but I can really show where the wing meets the body of the bird. And here again, it's not obvious where these feathers, where one feather starts and another one begins. I'm just going to suggest some feathers there. I know it's not one feather, so I will just suggest a few, and then add a little bit more shading into here, a bit more texture. Just a little bit of cross hatching, just to suggest that. I might just put a little bit of detail on this branch again. My husband often calls it a bit of scribbling. I always seem to do a bit of scribbling at the end of my paintings. I think all my paintings are actually mixed media though. I don't particularly think I'm a watercolourist or an acrylic painter or anything. I'm not that I'm not that fixed in my approach, and for me that's fine. I think mostly I enjoy drawing, and actually the painting is just the colouring in bit. So I don't want to go too, I'm in danger of adding too much detail here now. So I want it to be quite loose, and I want it to be a representation of the Chiffchaff, not a scientific illustration. Just a nice loose illustration that will complement the poem that I find, hopefully. I think if anything, the tail comes slightly off to one side a little bit too much, or maybe I haven't got the body quite angled enough to meet it. I could criticise it endlessly, but I'm just going to let it be. As I say, if what you want to do is just practice your painting and you're not that confident with your drawing, I think it's probably I would just trace it, print it off as large as you can, and then just trace it, and then you can just really concentrate on the painting. If I was to paint this again from the same photograph with exactly the same colours, it would look completely different. So no two of my paintings are the same. I can't copy my own painting. I can't copy my own paintings accurately. And I think that's part of it. That's the beauty of the uniqueness of each painting or drawing. That's what it's all about, as far as I'm concerned. That they aren't. If we wanted to create an exact copy of something, we would just photocopy it or take a photograph of it. But these are illustrations. They represent the time I've spent looking at this bird, and not necessarily the complete accuracy of the willow or chiffchaff, of the chiffchaff. So hopefully to most people it looks a bit like a chiffchaff. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd be really grateful if you subscribe. It does really help. If you could like it, maybe share it. And if you enjoyed it and you'd like to see more of these, then do let me know. Thank you very much.